How's everyone doing? Hey, yeah. And so before you kind of flame me on based on today's title itself, the few things I just want to say to you. First and foremost, today has been another fruitful day for me. I wonder how is it for you? We managed to sort a few things out, and I think it's really, really great that we've made improvements, we have made progress, and so there's much to talk about. Now, I just want to share with you a topic that I came across yesterday. So, yesterday I was listening to the presentation done by Guy Kawasaki. And in the presentation itself, he was just talking about the future of online business. Now, of course, I think some of the things that he say, I agree with him, and some of the things that he say, I kind of have my doubts. But then again, it's his perspective versus mine. So the few things I want to share with you in terms of what I've learned from the presentation that he has put forth. So first and foremost is the title. The title is called Future of Online Business. Now, and then he went on to say that, in fact, if you think about it, all businesses should be online. Now, while I think what he meant was that every business need to have an online presence. So whether you are a digital marketing company or you are a barber store, you will still need to have a digital presence. And so you need to have an online presence. People need to be able to find you. For example, when we were staying in the US during our 1 year travel adventure, I absolutely relied on Google to tell me if I want to look for, say, Japanese food within 2 miles, for example. I would just type in Japanese food near me and it will give me a list of restaurants to consider. And so if those restaurants were not online, then obviously Google isn't going to be able to fetch them as results for me. And obviously, I am not going to be aware of them. And as a result, I won't be able to patronize their store. Now, in the same note, there are times where we go to this obscure Chinese restaurant because sometimes we just yearn for some Chinese food. We go to this obscure Chinese restaurant, and the ability for us to find those Chinese restaurants, again, it comes down to than being online. And so I think from that respect itself, I would agree with him that every single business, and by extension of that, every single individual should have an online presence. Now, whether a whether all businesses should be an online business, I am not so sure about that. And if so, what it means is that are you able to complete the transaction online, almost purely online, right? Even the fulfillment of it, then I think that would be what we call a digital business. In other words, it's just between you and the customer, and you are able, whatever the customer ordered, you are able to ship to the customer via digital means. And so, in that respect itself, Amazon.com would not qualify as a pure digital business because it requires warehouses, it requires logistic, it requires delivery, it requires people to actually pack the the merchandise before they can ship it to you. And so while Amazon.com would have most of the transaction or have their transaction happen online, the fulfillment part of it actually comes down to um, in a offline world. And so it's Amazon.com a pure digital business. Well, for the matter, if you look at the things that you buy on Amazon, well, that's not the case. But if you are looking at, like, for example, the Kindle store or the Prime Video itself, then yes, Amazon, it's that section of Amazon's business, it's a pure digital business. Now, then, of course, there are certain shops or certain businesses that would benefit from the fact that they have an online presence, but everything else, including the transaction, including the interaction, including the fulfillment, is done offline, right? And so one way to think about that, until recently, where we have telemedicine, going to the doctor is pretty much an offline thing because you would actually have to get out of the house, go to the doctor, register, um, see the doctor, and then get your medication. Now, of course, these days, especially with COVID-19, it has made it possible for us to do a teleconsult. In other words, you do a video call with the doctor and you answer a few questions, and then after that, they ship the medicine to you. And again, it's leveraging technology, but it's not entirely a digital business. So that's something that I want to talk about with regards to Guy Kawasaki's presentation itself. Now, in his presentation, he also mentioned two things, and that those two things are the main thing that I want to share with you here today. And he talked about, with reference to the BCG matrix. Now, if you're familiar with the BCG matrix, if you're not familiar with the BCG matrix is basically the Boston Consulting Group um, matrix itself. So this matrix was actually done by a by BCG, I think back in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And it is used to help companies to be able to evaluate, their businesses. So let's take a look at that. All right. So the BCG, um, the BCG matrix basically as what you can see here, this is the BCG matrix. So you want to be you what you want to be is you want to look at the on the x-axis itself. What we're talking about is we're talking about cash generation, right? And the y-axis itself, we're talking about cash usage. And so why the title for today's show is Kill Your Dog and Milk Your Cow? It's simply this. Now, in this matrix itself, at the quadrant whereby it is a low cash generation, and at the end of the day, it's a low cash, but it's a also a low cash usage quadrant itself, and that's the dog. So these are the products, for example, that it's not generating a lot of cash, but it's also not requiring a lot of investment or injection of funds into this. And so if we kind of review our products and offering, I'm sure there are certain products that fall into that category. It's not making a ton of money, but at the same time, it is also not going to be growing very much. And so as a result of that, we should just kill those products or services. And so in my work, for example, um, in the past, I used to do a lot of consulting. And I like consulting because it gives me the opportunity to help the organizations and see them transform. That said, it's a very long process. And at the same time, it can also presents a lot of challenges. And so what I have done is that, it's not exactly a low cash generation. I mean, it pays good money, but based on the number of hours that I put in, I could get paid a lot more than if I were to pick something else. And so, you know, in the last, I mean, I'm glad that in the last 12 to 18 months, I have kind of slowly pushed off this consulting projects because, like I say, it just takes too much time while the satisfaction is there, but the cash at generation as well as the cash input, it's very low, right? And it just doesn't make sense for me. And so then there is this other category of services that I do, and this is actually training, but in a larger context. So it's not speaking engagement because in speaking engagement, usually I get between like 30 minutes to 45 minutes, max 90 minutes to do a session itself. But that's about it. If anything, it's more of a taster, it's more of something that I could share with people what I do, but not much impact I felt uh, on those platforms itself. That said, although those platforms sometimes generates the best customers for me now, but what I'm so things like speaking for me, I would place it at the question mark because it kind of yeah, it's good money because based on the amount of time that you spend at the session itself, like for an hour, you can get paid quite a fair bit. But the requirement to actually prepare for the speech and the speaking is just tremendous. Plus the traveling, I'm not particularly keen, and in a way, it's a good thing that now the travel it's out of the question. Of course, we're gonna travel again, but not for leisure. I mean, not for work purely. It's going to be for leisure. So that's more the question mark. So the part that was a cash cow for me was really training, and this is large group training because you train up to 20, 30 people, either from a single organization or people from various organizations, right? So like in the last 18 months, I've trained people from Singapore Police Force, the media company like Media Corp. Um, I've trained people from NUS. I've trained people from SMRT. So broad range of corporate clients that I've got, and that it's. I mean, it's once I have prepared my material itself, it doesn't really require much tweaking, except for the fact that when it's an in-house or it's a customized course, then that is where I will need to tweak it to use relevant examples for that particular organization. Otherwise, it's you create one time and you kind of do it over and over and over and over again, and so that's kind of like the cash cow itself. And I have been milking that cow for the last 18 months by just purely focusing on training, and of course, after that, looking at higher value add consulting projects itself, which I've done for quite a number of brands. And so those became a really, really good source of income for the business itself. But what I really want to do is I want to reach for the stars, because the stars essentially are the ones that are, they are the one that really gives you the best bang for your buck. In other words, I would just have to put in one time, or perhaps, yeah, most of the time it's just one time, but that piece of asset can then be used over and over and over again. And so what would that what would fall under that star? I will come to that in a minute. So a quick recap of how I've been using this for my own evaluation of my business is the following. If you look at dog the dog is basically the one that you want to kill, because this is the one that doesn't generate a lot of cash, but it requires a lot of inputs of cash, and it's just not going to give you much of a mileage, right? And so um, that is the one that you want to kind of kill. So in a nutshell, the dogs are the one that you want to kill because they are the ones that are not generating a lot of cash for you, and yet at the same time it requires the infusion of cash just to keep it going, right? And for me, in my case, these are short-term consulting projects, because even though they are short-term, I would still require to do a lot of preparation, and sometimes it gets delayed and all that. And so it's long hours, and while the pay is good, but the returns are good, but you know I could have better invested my time in something else. Now the one that it's the question mark are the ones that to me are my speaking engagement, because yes, they pay pretty well, and at the same time, from my experience itself, when I'm up there, people see me as the authority. And so it gives me that halo effect that when I recommend certain products or services, there is quite a good take up rate. But what I didn't like about that kind of engagement is you have to, every time when you go and do a talk or a speech, you would have to prepare new materials. I mean, you can use the same material over and over again, but at some point in time, it's going to be stale, and people are just not going to be very, very excited about it. That said, it's something that it's worth exploring, like I say, because it generates the additional revenue from projects, from consulting, from training in itself. The one that is the cash cow for me, like I said, is the training, because it's materials that I just have to prepare once, and I could do it over and over and over again. And the good thing with that is that it has given me the opportunity to train for corporates like NUS, like Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Manpower, huge corporations, MediaCorp, for example. And so that has been a great experience in and of itself. Um, and also that kind of generates good cash for me. Now, the one thing that I want to look at are the stars. And the stars for me are essentially, something that I could just create once, but I can use it over and over and over again, or it will be able to help me generate leads, generate awareness, get people to consider wanting to work with me over and over and over and over again. And that star is actually the creation of digital assets, which I've been doing for the last 100 over days. And the key idea behind that is to be able to codify my knowledge, skills, experience into a digital format which people can consume independently of me. Now, it may be something that you are familiar with, or to you it's natural, but for people like me, who is a Gen X, and we are not the native. We kind of grow into it, and in a way, we are lucky to be one of the few generations to see the evolution from no telephone to landlines to bulky mobile phones to what we have now in terms of a smartphone. I mean, we have seen the evolution of it, right? And also we have seen the evolution of how internet has gone through. And so if you ask me, this group of people like me, are the ones who kind of experience it. We kind of get a hang of it, but it's not something that we're natural with. And especially to be able to present in front of a camera, and to be able to speak with that level of passion and that level of purpose, it's not something that everyone is comfortable. Now, even if they are comfortable speaking into the camera via an edited video, that's one thing. But the other thing is that their ability to do a live video, in other words, there's no second take, there is no second try. The only way is to stop this live stream and then restart all over again. Short of that, really, it's just this one thing. And so it's something that you have to learn. And I feel that this is something that many people my age would have to learn, because otherwise I don't think we might be able to survive the next downturn. And with that in mind, thank you so much for being here today. I hope it has been helpful. And uh, please don't flame me for that dog thing, all right? And so, with that, I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Well, and of course, if you've got a question for me, what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you the um, the setup that I have. I have to say it's still not perfect, because I'm still not happy with the mic, but that's going to be fixed in a couple of weeks' time. It's being shipped, and so you will see some new changes from there. But other than that, I think if you want to ask me anything about the setup, please send me an email, drop me a DM. The other day, I had Chris Brogan who asked me about the setup and what I do, and so if you've got questions like this, please go ahead and ask them, and I'll be more than happy to share it with you. All right, and with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.